Hello, everyone. My name is Sana Green, and thank you so much for joining us. I am with some powerhouse healer, artists, leader women from Detroit, and we're working together on the Passing the Torch, Preserving the Flame project, which was created by the Wisdom Institute. And one of the people I have with us today, or we have with us today, is Gwendolyn Winston, who is the founder of the Wisdom Institute. Welcome, Gwendolyn. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us about the Wisdom Institute?
Thank you for inviting us to your podcast. So the Wisdom Institute started in 1999. Can you believe it? In 1999, women who were first generation college students started a support club called Sister to Sister. Over time, and with a lot of love and support from the Lewis College of Business Alumni Association, Wisdom Institute was birthed and became an African American woman and girl-centered nonprofit mentoring organization. Needless to say, back then, we weren't high on the fundability scale as practicing comprehensive sex education, having art-centered Black women's ways, doing ritual and ceremony, and celebrating our own voices and embodied womb-centered consciousness. It was off the beaten track. So times have changed. Some of those things are very popular now. Yet African American women's oppression and subordination have abated only slightly in the public sphere. So we're even more out loud in the public sphere. We're even more out loud for women's ways and with grassroots sensibility. Our focus is still spirit-centered, whole person, and we're talking about healing as justice. And we infuse art as our way of communicating and deepening advocacy for those causes that we care about. Right. And tonight we are so grateful for our artist, healer, advocates who are on this podcast for participating tonight. Our sisters are making the way plain and catalyzing what we call power with in terms of beliefs, thoughts, and action. So we're calling this our enhanced way of being. And I appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing with a particular program that we have, Passing the Torch, Preserving the Flame. We were awarded a grant from the Transforming Power Fund to reimagine life for African American women. And that's what we're doing through art.
Thank you so much. Now, Gwendolyn, can you tell me, how did you get to the place where you felt like you wanted to organize or create something to bring about change? I mean, most people, they look at things and they shake their head, tisk, 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 but don't always move to a place of action.
Growing up, I did what my mother told me to do. Didn't question mama. Mama said, do this, you did that. And my mother would always deploy me to go help somebody do something. And it's just part of my nature. If I see someone who is really doing some good work and it looks like they need help, I would say, can I help you? And that's really what my life has been like. I help folk. I help situations. I help things happen. I have skills. And spirit gives me the response, the way to do, and I just follow spirit. And I've met, and usually it's like an idea comes to me, or someone will say something to me, and spirit just delivers a way for me to act or not. And usually it is to support what someone else is doing. So I found myself in a leadership position, but not really the only one. I always work with community. So I was one of 5 women who founded the Wisdom Institute. And we worked in spirit and kept moving. We got tired. Some made their transition. And Cicely came into my life when I was like, I'm not doing this anymore, and brought new life to Wisdom Institute. So it just happens. It's happening like that. And resources are, when you tap into spirit, the universe delivers. And whenever there was a need, if you will, or a desire, the universe delivered. And here we are today, doing the work that we started in 1999.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. One of the things we were working on last year, which was our planning year for this grant that we got through the Transforming Power Fund, we had a session where we watched the documentary In Our Mother's Gardens, and we actually got together and talked about what's in our mother's gardens. And I also wanted to, I want to touch on that today because it'll kind of depict, I think, kind of who we are, what we're about. And I want to pass it over to Cicely, who's the co-executive director of the Wisdom Institute, because she may have to leave us. And so I'm going to have someone to talk about their mothers and who was in their mother, what was in their mother's garden. And I also want to talk about, as a mother, Cicely, what would you like to be in the garden for your children? First of all, tell us, Cicely Allen and co-executive director, how old are your children, and what would you like to leave them with? As we're talking about passing the torch, what would you like for them to experience in your garden as their mother?
That is like such a loaded question. If
And
you
it
would
may
have asked me
change.
this about a month ago, I probably would have answered it completely different. But I recently, I listened to this podcast called Dim Black Mamas. And the host, her name is Crystal Irby. And she wrote a piece called Motherhood is Not the Graveyard of Dreams. And it just lit a fire in me because it shifted my desire in terms of how I want to mother. I don't want to, let me go back. I want my kids to know that their mom was cool, creative. I want them to know that I love to sing, that I love to dance, that I cry. I just want them to see the entire person that I am, as opposed to just providing for them. I want them to see me as a whole woman. And that's something that I was blessed to see my mom be. I watched her lead a grassroots organization, Operation Get Down, El Kibalan Village. I grew up there. I remember when we first started going, she started off as just a volunteer, and she kind of worked her way up, just connecting with the community and being of service in any way that she could. And she wasn't even really like super educated or had any type of special gift except for the truth of who she was and consistent with that. And they could depend on her and trust her. People wanted to always talk to her. I call her the counselor. And so I want to leave that taste in my children's mouth, that they see their whole mother. Yeah, I do a little cooking, I do a little cleaning, I do a little screaming, but I'm more than that. I'm a whole human being. I have so many different sides to me, and I want to give them all of that flavor. So that's what I'm serving. I'm serving all the flavor from my garden. Um,
Yes, I love that. You know, actually, one of the women who's a part of Dim Black Mamas, Thea Monier, was a guest on my podcast, and actually that episode is running now, which is it's May now, right now. And I'm like so impressed with women who can be like cool and sexy and doing cool things, and it seems like they did not give up their dreams, because I felt like as I was growing up, I was born in the 60s, and I felt that women had to make a choice. My mother did like to help people, and so she worked in the school, and she was, she was an attendance officer, and so she collected clothing for students, and she really cared. And that is what's part of what's in my mother's garden. I wonder, Jara, maybe can you tell me what's in your mother's garden? How does it impact who you are today? Oh yeah, I'm a kizzy.
So my mother was an activist, but if you asked her that, that's not a term she would use to describe herself. She was basically in an arranged marriage when she was 15 years old to my father. And so by the time she was 18, she had 2 children on her hips. And I came much later in life, in her 30s. And she wanted to work. So my father's criteria for that was if she worked, she had to take me with her. So she started at the YWCA in Highland Park, Michigan, which the Young Women's Christian Association was a space of empowering women. And it was led by Black women, and it facilitated the healing, education, and love for Black women and children within the community. And she was started off in daycare and worked her way up to program director. And so she put me in every single program they had available, bless her heart. And so upstairs at the top of the building was a shelter for women who were escaping domestic violence. And we had classes downstairs, and we had amazing teachers. I think my Taekwondo teacher was the first Black woman Taekwondo fighter to win a gold medal for the United States. And I was introduced to art, gymnastics, you name it. I was, very much a part of that. But in addition to that, when they had political campaigns, I was licking envelopes. When I manned or womaned the front desk for the domestic violence shelter upstairs. I went door to door knocking with my mother when they had campaigns. And so when they had political conversations or discussions about the beauty and power of women, I was always included in that. And in my mind, I just thought that was the way women were supposed to be. All the women in my family worked. All the women in my family were powerful to me. And so as I grew up, I planned to be a part of the solution. And so I really became more active during my teen years through the Y Teens. We worked with Young Boys Incorporated, some of the gangs in the community. We worked with younger children. We helped elders. We helped on political campaigns. And then when I went to college, it expanded. And I remember my uncles taking me to college, to Michigan State University, and having a conversation with me. They told me to just go to class and do your work. Don't do none of that political stuff because these people are going to lynch you. I was 17 years old. And I think that very first week I was in my first protest in East Lansing and on the front of the paper, school paper, because that wasn't an option for me not to do anything. That's not the way my mother raised me. In addition to that, she also homeschooled me basically. So she made sure we had a library at home. And when other children were buying leather jackets and fancy designer clothes, she gave me the option to buy a set of encyclopedias. And I chose the books. And so that love of reading and political conversation and her giving me assignments to go look up political things. My mother would have newspaper clippings on the refrigerator door. And my assignment was to go and look that information up and to learn more about it. So, I just remember being very politically well versed as a very young person. So when my older brother wanted to vote for Ronald Reagan, I had to politically educate him and give him some things to read, because I was like, that's unacceptable. And so that carried on. So I've been an activist, like I said, since I was a teenager, but a part of that was having a mother who was a part of the solution. And so when I was fighting police and protests, when I was living in the South, traveling across the South, doing political work with the Malcolm X grassroots movement and the New African People's Organization, when I was doing acts of civil disobedience, when I changed my name, when I decided to let my hair be natural, other people were confused and didn't understand it. And my mother always supported me. She came to the meetings. She came to the film festivals that I threw. She supported me financially with donations and support. She would drive me to places I need to go if I needed help. And she has played a key role in the woman that I am today.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Your mother was, she was, I don't want to say unique, but she really influenced you in a really powerful way. And I guess all of our mothers do. All of our mothers do. So I want to go to Jara next. And can you tell us what's in your mother's garden? What's in your mother's garden?
My mother's a musician. She was a piano player, so there was always music in the house. And so that led her to become the organist at a Catholic church. And she traded her services so that we could go to this private school. And those nuns, they crack you over the knuckles with those long rulers, those yardsticks. And so you have to really pay attention. You have to do your work, and it had to be excellent. So I learned to read and I learned to write quite well in that and in that area, in that school. And the thing that really impressed me about my mom, though, is that she stood up for her children and her community with the paternalistic white ministers who were there.
Really? How so?
Well, she decided that, well, let me tell you a little bit about them. They had a contest, a writing contest, and I happened to win it. And the topic was, where is God? And so I wrote this 2-paragraph statement that God was in everything inside of me, and that sometimes I had conversations with his angels, and I told them the truth about what things I had experienced. So I won, and they published my little story. And then the priest and his friends called me over to the rectory, and I stood in front of these 3 alcoholic priests, and who told me that because I was a Black girl, it was not possible that God would come talk to me, that I would have to speak to God through them.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah, this really happened to me. I was 11 years old. So I went back and told my mama about it. And my mother said, well, they're going to have to realize where they are. So she asked the priest, she said, well, I noticed that this is Black History Month and you don't have anything for Black history, and all your children in these classes, they're mostly Black kids. So aren't you going to have something? You don't even mention it in the services that this is Black History Month. So he says, well, that's not my wheelhouse. If you want something like that, you got to do it. My mother said, bet. And so she went and got these wonderful speakers from the city. She made me learn this song, young, gifted, and black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream. So I sang that, and we were doing all this. I saw my first African drummer, who was Babasun Diata Keita, and Shirikiana Aina, who was doing the dance with this huge Angela.
Angela Davis.
Yeah, she had a big Angela Davis fro. And so that was my first time. I had never seen anything like that. And that awakened a hunger for Africa and my legacy in my soul. And that started my life. So she impacted us in a way that I'm still vibrating from that experience. And she had those Black History programs every year until we all graduated from the school, and they didn't want to do that trade thing with her anymore. So she influenced the whole Catholic diocese in Detroit. All of the schools, all the churches started having Black History programs. But it was my mama who started.
Wow. And
so she was powerful, and she's still a powerful woman.
Yeah. And when you look at religion and how religion supports the patriarchy and supports the whole concept that, women and people of color are subpar, then
to go through them. That was the killer.
And have to go through them. That's I'm doing this show about that very thing and how it's showing up right now in reproductive rights and how they're being challenged, and how I heard on the radio today about, they're actually speaking about this on the radio, where they're saying that the people that's the people who have who stormed the Capitol are actually functioning out of fear, they're afraid that people of color and women are going to have too much power, and that once people wake up, that they may be in danger, and this is why they need these guns. This is what I heard on Point Radio today, and so what supports that whole concept is the patriarchy, is this whole system of patriarchy, and there's men and women who support the concept of patriarchy, and Oya pointed that out to me when I posted that. So, man, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing. So I have two other ladies here, Lottie Spady and Anita Jones, who are both a part of the grant. And what I'll do is, you all may not, I'm going to tell you all, but I'll share more information about what we're doing with the program. I'll add that as a separate piece to the introduction of this show. Well, Ruby, can you tell me, what would you like to leave or to give to your children and grandchildren? You actually have a garden physically. You're an avid gardener. I would say avid, meaning that I think you said you ate kale for maybe 8 months last year that you grew in your yard. That you grew in the yard. What's in your garden for your children and grandchildren? Take yourself off mute.
I was able to harvest my greens and freeze many of them and eat some, give some away. But I still had greens as late as February, I should say. So I was still eating my own greens from the garden. But specifically, I think what I am leaving with my children is what they know about me is that I feel that the only thing we really own in this life is our personal stories. And so they know that I really strive to get out of the way of who they are, beyond my nurturing, raising them, and when they were in the womb, and that's beyond the physical womb, beyond the time that they reach the age of adult. I really try not to be heavy-handed. I wait for them to ask me for things. They know that I am just naturally an artist, but I'm a folk artist. I've made quilts, I've made dolls.
Now this is after you became a dentist. You were doing this.
Well, yes. They know that I also went to school a lot and studied science a lot and became a dentist, and then had the courage to say, I can't do this. And I changed my life. So they understand that you can do that. It's okay. And I don't think any one of them ever said, man, why didn't you stay a dentist, Mom? It's like, if you were a dentist, maybe we'd have some more stuff. But see, my kids were not raised like acquiring stuff, that type of thing. So they know that your gifts are innate, and they know that even though I don't necessarily say, oh, I'm an artist, or I'm a songwriter, or a singer, I do all of those things, and they know that about me. And so I think they also can see then that you can just be who you are, and it doesn't have to be like grasping, clinging, trying to fit into something that others outside of you would label. And recently we were talking about the fact that at New Year's, when Bella was in town, I handed them each an envelope, and they're like, "What's this?" And I said, "It's my end of life wishes." And they're like, "Mom, on New Year's we're all together." I'm like, "Well, I told my doctor that I had already given these to you, so I thought I better give it to you, And so they know that I don't feel like I have like stuff to pass on to them. I have life insurance, that type of thing. However, right away they were like, "You have all of those books, and your dolls and things in the purple cabinet." I gather all these things. So they even feel that, some things that I have, they're valuable to them. And so they know that I have cherished them in a certain way. And so in turn, in their homes, you can see that they also gather and collect and honor things in that manner. And so I've just given them the example of my living, my being, and they certainly have their opinions about their fathers, which between the three, there's two, and they, God bless them, they don't like pass judgment on Mom. Because I think once they got into love relationships, they realized it's like these love relationships, that it's more than like a notion, people fall in and out of love for many different reasons, and then you do many different things within those relationships for many different reasons, So I think I'm what I'm leaving them with is that sense of being true to yourself, owning your own story, and striving not to judge. So, life, nobody, this is cliche, but nobody said it would be easy, to live. You know, I certainly never gave my children any kind of mythology about how life is going to be. And so that's another thing. I think they understand that I try to be fully present and not do lots of projections and that type of thing about like if or having like the feeling that if I had done this, then my life would be some other thing. You know, I made changes and got into situations, and I just kept on moving along the flow chart, so to speak. Because if you choose A, you're going to have a whole set of options, or if you choose Z, you're going to have a whole other set of options. And you have to be able to just live into that and not waste energy thinking,
Right.
oh, I should have gone the other way. Because that's
Right.
one thing you can't do is go back and redo it.
Right. And one of the things that I thought was really wonderful was how your son, when he was about, his partner was about to have a baby, and your son came to you and asked about a naming ceremony, asked about some of the rituals that you were engaged in
A
with
blessing
women.
for his girlfriend.
Okay, what was it? What was it?
A blessing way.
And what, tell us about that. I mean, so clearly he saw you doing that and thought that it was something that was needed in this situation since she's not from here.
Well,
Right.
yes, a blessing way is just an alternative ritual to a traditional baby shower. They did have their online Zoom baby shower to get stuff, but a blessing way is specifically a circle for the mother, and it can be tiny or it can be bigger, you know. And I did have a blessing way for my sons, and then my daughter was born on the day that my blessing way was scheduled, so she was my blessing way, she was my rituals. She was born on a full moon in Scorpio, so you know, she came right along, and I never had that ritual. But Amas and I and my daughter Naja did a circle for Jasmine, and it was quite lovely. You know, we read some poetry, and I sang, and gave her some candles, and the affirmations that I was gifted by the midwife I apprenticed with, and right away I changed the terms contractions in these affirmations to expansions, because as I began to think about the process of labor and the fact that the baby is not going anywhere if the cervix does not expand, you know, if the cervix doesn't open, and that's how people sometimes get into cesareans, and because dilation has not occurred. So I changed the affirmations so that they say that your body is not contracting, your body is my cervix is expanding, you know. So don't use the word contractions, use expansions, because you want that uterus to open up and out. So yes, we did a blessing way for Jasmine.
And see, that's wonderful. And see, to me, that depicts kind of who we are. And we were going to round it out and bring Lottie Spady in, who is also part of the grant, and she does many things. Right now, she's wearing her herbalist hat, I guess you could say, media and herbalist. And Lottie, I wonder if you could talk to us about the concept of mothering through community, because I know you have your own children and grandchildren, but you've also, I think, played a role of nurturing young people who were not birthed from you.
That's a great question. That's a funny, it brings a smile to my face, because that is the truth. Like, Like I didn't even, it's interesting. Like I really don't know how I ended up in like activist work or community work or youth work or anything. It found me, and and I just went with it. And yeah, when I was working at one of my previous jobs, I was hired to like work in the teen center. And I was like, I had my own kids then. They were pretty small. And I'm thankful that the person that I worked for, she was a parent also. And so we could always bring our kids to work. If they were sick, they would just come and lay on the couch at the community center. They were always playing under the desks, and I never, had to separate work and family that way, which was a great blessing because my kids got to see me doing all kinds of stuff and participate in all this stuff, whereas a lot of parents have to divide, the recreation time from their work time. But yeah, I started working at this teen center and excuse me. I was like, I don't want to work with these teenagers. They know everything already.
They think they do.
I know. I was intimidated. Like for real. I was like, they're going to be like, who are you? But, through technology, them being just curious about what I was doing, they started kind of getting curious and coming over, and we started talking, and they were really therapeutic to me. Like I quickly learned like the way to work with youth, which is my parenting style. Also, I would say as a mother is to not know it all, to have them teach me, or to create situations where they're free to learn. And one of, like when I started learning about like high scope methodology, a youth behavioral development methodology, it's like structure and clear limits, but the freedom to make mistakes within a safe space. That really resonated with me because, it wasn't like, just tell them what to do, make them do this, they need to do that. And it seemed to work because I had so many I had so many kids. It was a joke. It was a joke. Like if we went thrift shopping, I would always stuff my Honda Element full of kids. And I stuffed my Honda Element full of kids. And we went to Value Village, and they would be like, Ma. I was like, y'all are not my kid. Look, how old are you? Don't be calling me Ma out here like this. And they would, and I stuffed my Honda Element full of kids and took them to see Nikki Giovanni. We had poetry classes anyway. We went to the Book Beat in Oak Park, and we've been having our little poetry classes, and they thought we were doing spoken word poetry, listening to Def Poetry Jam and Jessica Care Moore, and they were into it. So they came up in there and they were like Nikki Giovanni. They were buying her book and getting in line to get it signed. I was like, this is great. And I stuffed them all in my car, and we went to the Poor People's Conference in Cleveland for them to do poetry. And I stuffed them kids in my car. We had a sleepover at my house. This is why I never wanted to be like a social worker, because, I liked the more familial like approach. I had a Kwanzaa sleepover at my house with all
and
these
the parents
girls.
let them come.
The parents, it was, yes, the parents let them come, and they stayed, and we stayed up all night. They wanted to talk about stuff like, spirituality. It's so cool because they were asking questions like, what is the difference between the story of Adam and Eve, and, how does that really work? And am I going to get in trouble for having this conversation? And when you talk about like, because I was into Pan-Africanism then, I was like red, black, and green, red, black, and green, red, black, and green. I was, and they were like, what is this? So, we had slumber parties, and I still, to this day, like literally some of those young ladies were 14 years old when I met them, and they're now married with their own children or have children and lives of their own. And we still talk, and
some of them are activists or have working in nonprofits.
Yes, some of them have gone into food justice, started bookstores, do media work.
So they took some of the tools that they learned with you, and like it's now a part of their lives. How do you feel? How does that make you feel to see how what you did has clearly influenced them? Of course, they have their own path, of course.
Yeah. It's pretty. It's cool. It's really cool. Like
it's cool.
I mean, that's me trying not to cry. But like with like university prep, so and it ran the spectrum, right? Like University Preparatory Academy used to have this learning through internship program where the youth would go to a job site, 2 days a week, 2 full days a week to learn what these kids thought was their passion, right? So I got one kid, Tyrone, he wanted graphic design. And he came up to the spot and was like, oh, can I do my LTI here? I was like, oh, yeah, sure. The next semester, I had 4 kids come, Tyrone and 3 of his friends. I was like, okay, yeah, we can do that. The next semester, it was like 15 kids, like a whole class. And 1, 2, 3, 5 of those kids went to college for graphic design or started businesses in graphic design and have really, so to your question, I always just wanted to teach them, as I did my own awakening, which is a longer story. Like when I got there, I wasn't well versed in social justice. I didn't understand my own privilege. I was coming with this narrow lens, and they broadened it for me. And then I just wanted to make sure that the youth I worked with had those critical thinking skills, that analysis. Like if you can critically analyze, then you can critically analyze anything, whether it's your job, whether it's the food at the grocery store, whether it's your relationship, because I knew everybody didn't want to be activists. Some people were like, I don't want to do that, okay. But you can, so that's what I was excited to see them out in the world doing their thing. So,
yeah. And that's what it's about, passing the torch, sharing what you know, passing it on. And now some of them are sharing what they know in ways that they can and passing it on. And that's really what this whole passing the torch, preserving the flame project is about, that was started by the Wisdom Institute. And we're all sharing our gifts in a way that can help to organize, help us to be aware, become aware of social justice issues and organize. So ladies, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this. Does anyone have any last words that you want to share? Ruby, you're muted.
We didn't get to talk further about it, but perhaps another time we can speak about the choice question and how it's under attack.
Yeah, reproductive rights. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm doing a show on the spiritual focus or spirituality as we look at the question of choice, being pro-choice or pro-life. And so maybe I can talk to you a little bit about it and have some of your thoughts during that show. So, yeah, that's
The Wisdom Institute is active with reproductive freedom, and
I can barely. Can you speak up a little bit? You're a little bit low.
The Wisdom Institute is active with the reproductive freedom movement, and we sit at a statewide table. And Cicely and I have recently been asked to co-lead a education and outreach committee, and we brought to the statewide table that our interest was in bringing women in ministry and spirituality and art into the conversation, into the learning, and also with our spirit-centeredness, we also have recruited a biblical scholar to work with us, and that is in relationship to this grant, Passing the Torch, Preserving the Flame, creating a womanist lexicon, right? And so it is to relearn what we learned in religion, where women cause all the problems of the world.
Yes. If you listen to if you let
Yes.
the ministers that Jared talked to us, they let the priest that Jared told us about make the decisions.
Right. And so that our work with Passing the Torch, Preserving the Flame, is to reimagine the state of African American womanhood. And this is just an opportunity for us, because the people at the table are saying that reproductive justice is not only about choice. It's not only about abortion. It is about choice. It is about how we are human beings having the right to our body. And as we say with the Wisdom Institute, we have not had that right since our enslavement until today. And so we have, all of our work is undoing what has been rooted in our consciousness and our beliefs and our thoughts that we are less than. And so this Passing the Torch, Preserving the Flame is about lifting our wholeness, not only to ourselves, but to the world in which we are blessed to have the opportunity to choose how we want to be in the world. And this conversation to me is just affirmation and confirmation that we do have the power within to share in the world without.
Yes. And the thing is that there are those who are not, the fear doesn't come from feeling like people of color or women are less than. The fear comes in realizing that the people of color and women are actually not less than, but actually maybe have even a greater capacity for spiritual awareness, for giving, for love, for intellect. And that is where the fear lies. Francis Cress Wellesley talked about the genetic makeup and how the African gene tends to be dominant, whereas Caucasoid genes tend to be recessive. And I know this is maybe controversial, but I think that's a part of where the fear lies, and a part of why choice or the abortion rights, whether or not a woman has an abortion, is being challenged by a lobby that wants to take away the choice, because part of the I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but anyway, it's so much larger than it's political, it's genetic, it's spiritual, it's about women, it's about choice. There's so many intersections of social awareness that come into play when we're looking at the choice, when we look at the concept of whether or not a woman has the right to have a child or not. So, yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent. But anyway, ladies, thank you so much. I know it's getting late. I really, really, really appreciate you all for hanging in here. And thank you so much for pinch hitting and making sure that we get everything flowing. And so I'm looking forward to working with you all. And thanks so much.
Thank you.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. Did I say it was free? It's totally free. You don't have to pay anything to get started. There are creation tools, and you can edit and trim the end. You can record. There's intro music that you can use. It has so many really cool features that I really needed as I was starting to podcast. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM and get started. Go ahead, download, get started. Let your voice be heard. Thank you so much for joining me for In the Center of Her Power podcast. I sincerely hope that you were fed with divine feminine soul food. Please like or subscribe or share the podcast. And until next time, shine.